Hi, this is Corey Johnston, and today's lesson is going to take place in the 15th chapter in the book of Job. We're going to hear from Eliphaz the Temanite for the second time. We earlier heard from him in chapters 4 and 5. The 15th chapter launches the second round of rebuttals, so we hear from Job's three comforters or friends who are introduced to us in the order in which they are presented in chapter 2, verse 11. They're all there to struggle to make sense and comfort their friend Job, who just had this inexplicable calamity visit him all of a sudden, all at once, and they're struggling to make sense of it in the dialogue which ensues after a 7-day period. And what we've heard from, the friends, they all have eloquent words, and they are, generally correct in their theology, and they certainly have a poetic presentation of Elohim as they see him, but they all subscribe to the same narrow prism, the limiting prism, which categorically excludes the possibility that suffering can be visited upon one, not as a direct consequence of them deserving it. So Job was innocent and upright and walked in all his ways, and then suddenly he lost everything all at once, his health, wealth, and his family, and they all insist that he has some secret sin, and the laser-like focus and intensity of because now their theology is on the line. They have to defend it, because if what they say isn't true, then what happened to Job could happen to them, because they are obedient by their own measure and understanding of Elohim. But what does Job say in the 14th chapter? We read first verse, "Man born of woman is of few days and turmoil filled." So life is short, and it's filled with struggle, filled with trouble, filled with chaos. That's just the way life is. This is an observation, a self-evident one. Verse 2, "He comes forth like a flower and withers. He flees like a shadow and does not continue." So he compares life to a flower, and he says that the human, the existence of a tree is enviable from a human vantage point, because when you chop it down to the stump, it still has life. It still can grow. Even if you get it all the way down to the ground, all you're going to do is put a drop of water in it, and then life and nutrients and sunlight will add life to even a stump of a tree. But man is not so lucky. He vanishes like the leaf of a flower in a field when the autumn comes. Verse 7, "For there is hope for a tree, for it is cut down, that it sprouts again, and that its tender branch does not cease. Though its roots grow old in the earth, and its stump dies in the ground, at the scent of water it buds, and brings forth foliage like a plant." So if you give the tree the right ingredients, the ones that are necessary for its growth and development and sustenance, food, sunlight, and water, you can put it all the way down to the ground, and there will still be life in it as long as the roots are there, as long as the stump is there. Where there is a stump, there is hope for life. And Job does not. He envies the tree in his present situation. Verse 13, "If only you could hide me in the grave, conceal me until your wrath turns away, appoint me a time and remember me. If a man dies, would he live again? At the day of my struggle I wait till my change comes." So Job is not deficient in his faith in the afterlife. He's just questioning he's trying to almost use, because he is in searing pain, so he's asking for the instant alleviation of his misery. That would solidify his faith in Elohim at this moment in time, because he questions why he's even experiencing what has he done to it. What is the message that Yahweh is trying to convey? "You would call and I would answer you. You have yearned for the work of your hands." So he's saying, if you take one step towards me, I will take 2 steps towards you. Or if I'm calling you right now, so hear me and grant me a day of an audience in your court. And he repeatedly reminds him that he is the work of his hands. In other verses, he questions why he would create something like Job just to destroy it. And verse 21 and 22, this is the tail end of the review. "His sons come to esteem, and he does not know it, and they are brought low, and he does not perceive it. He feels only the pain of his flesh, and he mourns over himself." This is Job's situation to a T. His sons and daughters did come of age. they were upright and decent and respectful children. He had 10 of them, and then the physical structure in which they were housed collapsed on them from an east wind, and they brought low. But all Job can think about is his pain, because he, in addition to losing his family and his wealth, he is now covered with skin boils, painful skin boils. So if you lost everything and still had your health, at least you would have something. But now he really feels like he has nothing. And you would think that friends and comforters and counselors in such a situation would have some sympathy and empathy. But remember, these three, the Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, they have a lot. They have a lot on the line, because their theology is in defense. Because if what they say isn't true, then what could happen to Job could happen to them. So that's what their stake is. And Eliphaz the Temanite answered and said, Teman was a town in Edom, the territory of Jacob's older twin brother Esau. It had a reputation for wisdom, as is referenced by Jeremiah 49:7. And Eleph, well, the same thing I try to do before I begin each and every monologue is try to imagine what they're going to say in answer to that. But I already gave you some previews and premonitions that the intensity of his criticism and his personal attacks are going to increase. So you ain't seen nothing yet from the first round of, would a wise man answer with vain knowledge, or fill his body with east wind? So he's accusing Job of not being wise because he has answered with vain knowledge. His knowledge is vain. That means it is empty. It means it is useless. It is all veneer, no substance. There's no benefit from the knowledge that he professes and proclaims. And so he's establishing and asserting his own claim for superior wisdom with these words. He comes out swinging. So we just do want to appreciate that it is directed towards Job. He is telling him, you are not wise, and your knowledge is vain, and your body is with east wind. That means the meditations of your heart that are going to come out of your mouth are, empty air, and it's just bluster and all air and all empty. Would you reason with useless talk, or by speeches which do not profit? So he's saying that what he's heard out of him is useless. It hasn't told him anything he doesn't know. He hasn't been listening with the attention one would think that a friend in Job's situation would merit. But speeches, he's saying that he had not profited from his speech. He had not learned anything new. And if he got really into it and he treated Job with all due deference, he would appreciate the vantage point of one who suffered. And because suffering does teach us a lot. So suffering does mold us and make us wiser, and lack of suffering, we're not meant to live life in constant suffering, but we are to learn from our suffering and live with it. So Job does have a unique vantage point from that outlook. Indeed, you do away with reverence and withhold prayer before El. Job was a man of prayer and a man of sacrifice, and also a man of reverence and worship and just uprightness all around, all day, every day, and throughout the day. But he's accusing him of have forsaken the path, because the path and the path of obedience is the key which unlocks the gate to the blessings, and he is being cursed right now. So he's saying that he either withheld prayer or he prayed wickedly, and it did not reach Elohim, because our sins can separate us from the access and audience to his ear. This is much is communicated in verses such as Isaiah 59:1-2. We can also read Proverbs 15:23 or 29, and also John 9:31. For your wickedness teaches your mouth, and you choose the tongue of the crafty. So he's accusing him of two things: that the contents, the words of his mouth, are informed and influenced by wickedness. That means there's an underlying wickedness motivating them, and they are used to excuse and justify his own wickedness, and saying that he hasn't sinned, but he's suffering, so he must have sinned, according to Eliphaz's narrow, black and white, prismatic theological outlook, his archaic theology, which he wouldn't depart from. None of his three friends could, because they had invested so much in the defense of this principle. But the tongue of the crafty, now he also says that Elohim thwarts the designs of the crafty in 5:13. That is the only passage from this book that is repeated in the New Testament by Paul in his first chapter of. So he that shows that he is wiser and stronger than all the the children of the world who are wise in the ways of this world, and they have carnal knowledge, but their wisdom is as naught to him. And he's accusing Job of using sophistry, which is the ability to make the weaker argument appear stronger through the right words and the right presentation and the right manipulation of the truth. Not I, but your own mouth condemns you, and your own lips witness against you. So he's absolving himself of being a condemner. He's just pointing out the fact that he stands condemned by his own lips, and by the words of our mouth, a man can be justified or acquitted or judged or damned in Matthew 12:36-37. So he's saying that everything Job has been saying now, if you are witnessing before in some sense, he is a witness in a court of law. So anything he says can and will be used against him, and he's not. So he's using everything he says against him without deigning to specify what he has said. So what he's doing is attacking his words, not his argument. This is a sure sign of a loser in an argument, because they cannot attack the argument, so they insult the words, the plural words, without, as a matter of critical integrity, dissecting at least one. Were you the first one born, or were you made before the hills? Now, one of the things that Eliphaz adamantly insists upon is that with age comes wisdom, and this is a general truism. You cannot deny that, but it's far too simple to suggest that the elders, people who are older, are automatically wiser. It is, some people who are young are wise, and I say to them what Paul said to Timothy, let no one despise you because of your youth. But a person who is young and wise will be wiser when he is older. So the existence of long life does not impart wisdom, but it enhances it in those who are already wise. But it does make even a foolish person wiser, as they live with the regrets they've accumulated for their life of poor choices. But the first one born, was I born yesterday? That is a common colloquial to establish our own intellectual independence, or saying, I'm not going to fall for that trick. Was I born yesterday? I'm not naive in the world. I've seen a thing or two, so try that on some other sucker. Or were you made before the hills? The mountains and the hills they have lifespans, and they do crumble and corrode in the fluctuations of time, but they are symbolic of eternity, if not eternal in an entity. Have you heard the secret counsel of Eloah, and do you limit wisdom to yourself? So he's establishing his claim to be intellectually superior in wisdom. He's claiming to speak the words of him is God speaking to him and through him. So how dare you refuse my words, which are one and the same with his? That is not completely or exactly correct in all situations, but we just want to appreciate the magnitude and depth of his and severity and extremity of his claim that that he is speaking the words and wisdom and mind and might of Eloah, and Job is speaking from his own self. So a lot of his insights and observations were divorced from the spirit, objectively speaking. Eliphaz's, that is. What do you know that we do not know? Understand that is not within us. So you would think that one, by sheer proximity to the pain and that he was experiencing and suffering, he would be made wiser and have a few more takes on life. And Job does become wiser as a result of this experience, and this book is rightly categorized in the Old Testament genre of wisdom literature, even though a lot of the alleged or so-called wisdom of some of these wise men isn't exactly or fully or thoroughly or totally wise, but they are preserved because they are valid, and they are certainly inspired by the Spirit, but he's just claiming once more that Job doesn't know anything that he doesn't know. He hasn't said anything he hasn't heard. He hasn't taught anything he hasn't known. His words are empty, and his chatter is useless, and his words are hot wind and vanity, as he says already. But the gray-haired and the aged are among us, much older than your father. So he rests his case in the jury of the older people, and it is the oversimplistic notion that with age comes wisdom. So he can claim all the old people, all the wise men in his corner, and ones who are even older, much older than his father. Job, we only read of his wife and his children. We don't read who his father was, or he does not have a name. He's a father's name, as was the custom in the Hebrew culture. Job is not exactly Hebrew. They would have been known as Jonah, son of Amittai, for one example. But Job's father, we don't know if he was still living, but even if he was, wherever he was born, the people in Eliphaz's corner were there, and you were just born yesterday compared to these men. So the aged and the gray hair and the wise are in our camp and in our corner. Are the comforts of El not enough for you in a world that deals gently with you? So Job had known comfort, he had known delight, he had known pleasure and prosperity. He was a man who was prosperous in the ways of the world, and seemingly this wasn't enough, because he had always known Job to be a man of obedience, a man of integrity, and a man of wisdom who was always helpful. But yet suddenly this calamity came on him, and that can only mean that Job did something wrong. But it is not that simple in this situation. So he's accusing him of forsaking the life, but he's actually mimicking Satan's philosophy, because Satan accuses, in the first chapter, he accuses Yahweh of being a God unworthy of worship. He's essentially communicating to him that he has to pay people to worship him. And if religion was a simple system of rewards for righteousness, then it would be reduced to a species of selfishness, and it wouldn't be about the one to whom it truly belongs to, that being the object of our worship. What have you taken to heart, and why do your eyes flash? So he's taking it personally that Job seemingly hasn't acknowledged or benefited or made the most of, or even interpreted his wisdom, his vast store of wisdom, which are the words of divinity himself, in his own inflated estimation, and he has not benefited from him. They are going in one ear, out the other. His speech, his thoughts are not influencing the words and the thoughts that are coming out of Job's mouth and heart and mind. So he's taking it a little personally. And what do your eyes flash? That can mean any number one of things, and our eyes do have appetites, and they do gravitate towards the thing which delivers its satisfaction. So if we take refuge, if we take vacations on the vanities of the world, we will miss out on the wonders of the world. The word, sorry. That you should turn your spirit against El, and let words go out of your mouth. So he's speaking about El when he has forsaken him, he has abandoned him, and that is why, in his vantage point, that Elohim has forsaken or withdrew his hedge of protection upon Job, because he disobeyed, he had some secret sin. But when your spirit is not right with Elohim, all your prayers will be unanswered. When you sacrifice in the wrong, divorced from the correct spirit of sacrifice, your prayer will be as a foul stench to him. And so, just stop talking, because you don't know what you're saying, you don't know who you're saying about, and you don't know who you're talking about or what you're talking about. What is man that he should be clean, and one born of a woman that he should be righteous? So we can read this question in any number one of ways, but the way I'm going to read them is the impossibility of the natural man to be clean. What is man that he should be clean? It is not in our capabilities to be pure and clean. We can purify ourselves, but it's ultimately we are not the purifiers in the purification process. one born of, so there is none righteous, no, not one. The doctrine of universal depravity is real. Our righteousness is as filthy rags before him who is without blemish, in Isaiah 64:5. So there are none among us who are clean, none who are pure, none who are righteous, none who are innocent, at least holy, at least blameless, completely, totally, and blameless and sinless. But what is man that he should be? Look, he puts no trust in his saints, and the heavens are not clean in his eyes. So the saints is ultimately translated as angels in other accounts. It's kind of curious here, but the angels do have the potential. They are creatures of agency. They have the potentiality and the culpability and the capability to sin and rebel. And in fact, a third of them followed Lucifer and his rebellion. They became disembodied, not as an immediate consequence, but as a result of impregnating the human race. The antediluvian, a careful reading of Genesis 6:1 and 2 does reveal this. So they were disembodied sometime after. So, he doesn't trust all of his angels, but when he appoints a task to the ones who stayed loyal, he can certainly trust them. And the heavens are not clean in his eyes. Satan does have heavenly access. That much we read of in the 6th verse of the 1st chapter. Satan is permitted into heaven, and there he stands accusing these saints, accusing Job and accusing Yahweh both at once in the 1st chapter. 16th and final verse of this lesson. How much less one who is loathsome and corrupt, drinking unrighteousness like water. So our spirits and our spirits have appetites, and if we feast on unrighteousness and we drink it like water, that means we just gravitate it. We suck it in and gravitate towards it and observe it and digest it and just live by it. So how much less are we than the angels, who are creatures of agency, but they do not operate on the same basis of faith and grace as us. But that takes us to a level, the complexities of which I'm going to shy away from. That's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much. I'm so glad to see you. Take care until next time. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.